On today's show, the Hawks snap a three-game losing streak with a very impressive, lopsided win over the Los Angeles Clippers on the road. We'll get into how it transpired and more, and all of that is coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1676 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Sunday evening, and it's actually now Monday morning as I'm recording this podcast. And today's show is brought to you by the folks at LinkedIn Jobs. They'll help you find the most qualified candidates that you want to talk to and help you to do it faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. Terms and conditions apply. And also, I want to encourage you at the top of the podcast, as I always do, to make us your first listen each and every day. Check us out across podcast platforms, places like Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as well as YouTube on the video side. It's been a very busy stretch for us, including shows over the weekend and a back-to-back coming up here. But broadly speaking, a fun night for the Hawks. They snap a three-game losing streak and pick up their first win on this West Coast trip. That's always a little bit dire, that five-game trip out west. A rematch of a 149-144 game against the Clippers earlier this year in Atlanta. That was a wild game. And a lot different flow this time around, different personnel on both sides, etc. But a pretty wild contrast from the last two games to this one. The Hawks, of course, had lost 3 games in a row, but in particular these first 2 games on the road trip, they lost to teams that are not particularly good. The Blazers and the Jazz, who were shorthanded. And basically, I would say this is a good reminder that life in the NBA is interesting and different, and you can't take anything for granted in either direction. The Hawks did not play particularly well in the 2 losses, albeit they are shorthanded. It's always something to keep in mind. The Hawks' roster challenges have been very, very apparent in recent days. But in this one, they played great, number one, but it's also just like, that's the NBA. You can't take anything for granted. The Hawks were big-time underdogs coming in, as we'll talk about in a second, but they were up 17 at halftime. They had a great start to this game, had 3 big runs in that first half, broke it up in the third quarter, and led by as many as 29 points in the third quarter. Never really challenged on the stretch. And honestly, the game wasn't even as close as the final score of 110-93 kind of indicated in the second half. So, again, I mentioned before, but the Hawks were actually 9.5-point underdogs in this game, according to our friends over at FanDuel. That is the second biggest point spread underdog the Hawks have been all year long. Second biggest all season long. The Hawks have played 67 games. And on paper, if you go by a point spread, it's not always like gospel, but certainly is a good indicator. This was their second biggest underdog status of the whole season. So their second most difficult game on paper, and only behind a road game in Boston that was eventually a loss for Atlanta. They did have both Jalen Johnson and Bogdan in this game, which was nice to see after those guys had kind of been staggered the last couple games. Still, though, without 7 guys. Trae Young, Okongwu, Sadiq Bey, Bufkin, Griffin, Lundy, Mo Gay, all with injuries. Dylan Windler was healthy and active in this game. The Clippers were not 100% healthy either. No, they did not have Norm Powell or Russell Westbrook, but they did have their top 3 guys, and the Hawks were facing a team that was much healthier, and the Clippers, even with this loss, are 42-25 this year, so it was very impressive, and honestly, a very good two-way performance from the Hawks. I think especially the defense in this game. They had about 102-ish defensive rating in this one. That's fantastic against anyone, not to mention the Clippers are good offensively. LA shot 38% from the field and 31% from 3 in the game. Some of that, as always, is poor shot making. I thought the Clippers did not play well in this game, kind of independent of the Hawks, but at the same time, I want to be very clear, the Hawks did play very well defensively. They were aggressive, they were assertive, they were, I think, on top of their rotations the entire game. They were attentive, like they were plugged in and dialed, and that was pretty impressive on both sides of the floor, especially defensively in this one. Only 30 points in the paint all night for the Clippers. They're not a huge attack the rim team, especially without Westbrook, but still, that was a very good job by the Hawks to kind of wall up around the rim. Granted, they did allow 29 free throw attempts in the game, which is a lot, but that did not override anything else in this game. The Hawks also forced 16 turnovers that led directly to 26 points. That's a huge, huge swing. Plus, they had 7 blocks, so tons of deflections, playing really aggressively, really physically in a good way for this Hawks team. And, LA got basically nothing from almost anyone other than Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. And that includes James Harden, who had 9 points but did not score a point until the fourth quarter of the game. And he was brutal, I thought, in this one. Terrence Mann didn't get there very much at all. They were missing, kind of their number probably 4 and 5 scorers in Westbrook and Norm Powell, but still, it was literally a two-man offense for LA for most of the night with Harden playing the way he was, and the Hawks did a very, very good job kind of playing into that and being attentive. And Kawhi got off early, but other than that, it was basically, I thought, a strong across-the-board defensive performance from the Hawks in this game. The offense was not quite as good, I didn't think, as the defense, but still, it was more than enough on the whole. About a 118, 119 offensive rating. That's very, very solid. Not incredible, but certainly above average. It was a lot like the game on Friday against Utah. So if you missed it, I talked about the game extensively on this same podcast feed, but the Hawks, of course, lost that game in Utah by a narrow margin. It was a competitive game all the way through, but they did shoot the heck out of the ball from three-point range in that game on Friday. And unlike the game today, it was basically like they shot the ball incredibly well on Friday to stay in the game, whereas today, them shooting the ball incredibly well made them kind of put the game away in some ways. So in that game, they were 20 of 39 from three. They shot like 38% from two. It was brutal on Friday. In this game, they were 17 of 34 from three and only 48% on twos, but that's better from two, still not very good. They're still having some trouble getting into the paint right now with their available personnel, without Trey, etc. But having Jalen back helps that quite a bit. And if you make half your threes, you are going to have a good offense almost by default. In the last two games, the Hawks are shooting 51% from three. And if you do that, again, like you're going to score enough. There are ways to not get to kind of submarine that. Like on Friday, shooting as poorly as they did inside the arc was pretty rough. In this game, there were some other things on the margin that weren't fantastic, but they moved the ball well, they were unselfish, and they made their threes. And that combination very much helps. Now, the difference was between this game and that game on Utah was really the defense. I think the offense was very much the same, or at least, I won't say the same, very similar to what happened on Friday in Utah. It was the defense, which is why I led with that. That was kind of the difference in this game. But they did a good job on the offensive glass in this game. I thought Capela in particular did a good job there with six offensive rebounds, but they did a good job overall. They had 5 guys in double figures. They had 9 guys with 5 points or more, so really good balance. Nobody kind of dominating, but still a lot of guys played well across the board in this one. There was one kind of, on the margins issue. They had 60 turnovers, which is not very good, and also 12 free throw attempts. That's a very low number, so that ratio is not where you want it to be. You want to have probably double your free throw attempts than you do turnovers in the game, but they had 32 assists, and that was very helpful. They moved the ball very well, and as I said again on Friday, when you make threes, you're going to have more assists. Those generally are correlated pretty heavily. And this is actually probably the biggest swing. This is more of a two-way thing to kind of put a bow on this. The biggest difference in the game, other than just like pure shot making, was transition opportunities and also success in those opportunities. So the Hawks were actually well below the league average in half-court possessions in this game. They actually were not very good offensively in the half court, which isn't a huge surprise. Like without Trey, without Onyeka, even without Sadiq Bey to have another shooter, it's not a team right now roster-wise that's really built to be a great half-court offense. But they soundly won the battle of getting out in transition and also converting. They had 31 fast break points in the game. Part of that is creating those steals that lead to turnovers, that lead to easy buckets. Now, that's not about your offense necessarily, but it's certainly about your defense. That's very helpful. And that wasn't all of it. But 31 fast break points is a ton of fast break points in a game. And only 11 allowed by the Hawks in this one. And the Hawks, of course, defensively all year have been pretty rough as far as getting back and stopping transition opportunities. So that two-way, being able to run on offense and not allow running on defense was huge. This is a crazy stat. According to our friends at Cleaning the Glass, the Hawks scored more than 2 points per possession in transition in this game. So do the math on that. That means you're scoring more than a bucket at the rim. So there's obviously some threes in there. They shot the ball well from three-point range, but more than 2 points per possession every time you run in the game. Not only are you running, but you're dominating when you actually do that. So it helps to have Jalen. He's the biggest key to that as far as their offense is concerned, because he is a one-man wrecking crew sometimes in transition. But the Hawks, I think were very attentive. Quinn seemed pleased. Everyone was in good spirits after the game. But yeah, they played well in this one. Like, again, the Clippers weren't particularly good, I didn't think, but the Hawks also forced that. So nuanced perspective, like the Hawks did not play very well on these first 2 games on the road trip. They lost them both. They were both kind of winnable games that didn't break the right direction. They had a shot in the air on Friday to win the game. But this is one where, like, it was surprising. I don't know if that was like stunning or whatever. It's an NBA game, and as I sort of bring things full circle to where I started this first segment, you can lose to anyone in the NBA, and you can beat anyone in the NBA most of the time if things go a certain direction. And I think the Hawks played very well. The Clippers played very poorly, I thought, for at least in the middle of the game. and the end result of that was a comfortable win. Like, if you told me, like, ranking the outcomes of this game between close win, close loss, and blowout win would have been certainly last on the list because the Hawks were, again, 9.5 underdogs in this game. But they played really well, and a nice performance on the whole to kind of give a little bit of goodwill heading into a back-to-back against the Lakers on Monday evening. All right, we'll have more coming up on this game, sort of how it unfolded in the middle, and then our player evaluation at the end of the podcast, including a kind of a mystery injury potentially to Bogdanovic that we'll touch on later on the podcast. But first, a word from our sponsors on the show. Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs, and when you're hiring for a small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the roles that you happen to have available, and that's why you check out the folks at LinkedIn Jobs. They have the tools to actually find the right professionals for your team. They help you do it faster, and they help you to do it for free. I've been on the hunt before to hire people for my day job a few times in the past, and I really enjoyed the work of the folks at LinkedIn Jobs. It's been huge, making the whole process much easier and much more efficient, which I value. They also know that small businesses are often wearing a ton of different hats and might not have the time, resources needed to hire properly. And they are not just another job board at LinkedIn Jobs. They have a network of more than 1 billion professionals. That makes it the largest and the best possible place to hire. It gives you access to professionals that you can't find anywhere else. And they also do that while making the process easy and intuitive for you. Hiring is much, much easier when you have that many quality candidates available to you. It's so easy, in fact, that 86% of businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. They're also finding ways to make the process easier at LinkedIn Jobs, and 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn Jobs for hiring purposes. Post your job for free by going to linkedin.com/lockedonnba. Again, post that job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. Terms and conditions apply. All right, we'll dive in now to how this one kind of unfolded, and it was an early run by the Hawks to take the lead at the outset. They had a 9-0 run, in fact, to go up by 6. Capela had a huge start for the Hawks. He scored the first 6 points for the Hawks, 6 rebounds and a steal in the first 5 minutes for Clint. He was flying around. Krejci had a nice block at one point. Jalen had a nice no-dip 3 in the corner. DeJounte shot the ball well at the outset. No really huge surprises rotation-wise. I mentioned before that Dylan Windler was actually healthy and active. People kind of asked me why that would be. Windler is basically watching his games played. If you follow the Trent Forrest saga, on a two-way, you only have a certain amount of games. Windler was on a two-way previously this year, so he's not eligible to be active every night the rest of the season. So I think with Jalen and Bogey both playing and available, I think Quinn and the organization were probably like, okay, is he going to play in this game? Probably not. We'll make him inactive, save a game there. So that's kind of why that happened. But they played Hunter, Garrison Matthews, Bruno Fernando first together. Then Trent Forrest was kind of the backup point guard, in addition to some time with DeJounte Murray. And then actually in the second quarter, they brought in Wes Matthews for a stint as well. So 10 guys played, 10 guys active, and there you were. They were actually up 2 at the end of the first quarter, despite the fact that Kawhi had 17 for LA. But as I mentioned before, the defense was kind of aggressive and active all night long. They had 3 steals, 2 blocks in the first quarter, generally just making life difficult for everybody other than Kawhi in that first quarter. And then things broke their way a lot in the middle of the game. So if you combine the second quarter and the third quarter, it was 57-33 in favor of Atlanta. 8 points in a row. Dove in the second quarter for the Hawks to go up by 10. LA missed their first 6 shots. There was a nice sequence in the middle of that where Hunter had a nice block shot, and then actually on the ensuing possession, Jalen threw a nice outlet pass to Hunter for a layup. Then Wes Matthews came in for his first stint. He actually made a couple threes. He's been red hot for 3-point range dating back to Friday. And then there was a 12-0 run by Atlanta to go up by 21 in the middle of the second quarter. So the Clippers, I think, were like 2 of 15 from the field at that point in time in the second quarter. It was pretty impressive. The Hawks actually had 3 different runs, a 9-0 run, an 8-0 run, and a 12-0 run, all in the first half to go up by 17 points at the break. They actually had 20 assists on 24 field goals in that first half, I should say. That just means that you're taking good quality looks and passing and being kind of just the ball's moving, all that stuff. It's a very good kind of a healthy offensive stat to have. Good balance as well. Clint had a double-double by halftime. He was very good. And then defensively, they forced 10 of the turnovers that they got in the whole game, 10 of them in the first half, plus 5 blocks. And LA was missing their shots as well. After halftime, it wasn't like it was like totally over, obviously being up 17 points. It was more sluggish offensively in the early portion of the third quarter for the Hawks, but they managed to avoid some damage there because LA got it to 13. I even tweeted this during the game. I think it felt like a little bit like danger zone wise for the Hawks to be only up 13. Like, obviously you want to be up 13. It's a good place to be. But given that LA is the better team on paper, they were favored, all that stuff, it was a little bit shaky for like a couple minutes in the third quarter. And then the Hawks hit the gas pedal. They had a 12-0 run to go up by 25 points mid-third. DeJounte hit 3 threes in that stretch. He was actually red hot for three-point range at that point. And on the other end, LA just could not make a shot. Like, I don't want to attribute that all to the Hawks or to the Clippers. The Hawks did a good job defensively. I want to be stressful about that the entire way. But the third quarter was crazy. LA didn't have a field goal for the final, like, 9 minutes of the third quarter. No field goals. 9 minutes. That is a rarity, let's just say. LA was shooting like 30% from the field at that point in time. The lead was in the mid-20s. Hunter got hit hard, actually, in the head by PJ Tucker on a foul in the final minute of the third quarter. It was ruled a common foul, which surprised me. I thought it was probably going to be a flagrant. Probably should have been a flagrant, in my opinion. But Hunter, fortunately, seems to be fine. That was all I kind of worried about there. But yeah, the big headliner in the third quarter was not only the big run the Hawks had, but LA not hitting a field goal for, it actually extended into the fourth quarter. They didn't have a field goal for like 10 and a half minutes, which is just wild stuff. And by the way, that was Harden's first field goal of the game with 11 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. So he was not very good in this one. The Hawks actually only had 6 points in the first 6 minutes of the fourth quarter, so the door was cracked open just a little bit. It wasn't really ever a fear that they were going to lose the game at that point in time, but they kept that door open a little bit. It was like a 15-point game with 5 minutes to go or so, but it was not really in doubt, I will say. Like, it was mostly comfortable for the Hawks, in my opinion. And with that said, they were able to kind of get out there with the victory without too much of drama at the end. I was joking, and I think so was Bob Rathman on the broadcast. The Hawks didn't really have anyone to go to in garbage time. That's the only thing about having 10 guys available, is that you don't have a third unit to go to. So they were kind of just rotating guys in. But they did manage to, I thought, wisely watch the minutes for almost everyone in this game, with a back-to-back looming and a comfortable lead. Only Jalen played 35 minutes or more in this one. Murray played his least minutes in a long time, which was a good decision, I think. Bogey, 30 minutes. He left the game, as we'll come back to in a second. On the player side, 124 minutes. That's good. That's a good spot for him to be in. Capela, 26 minutes. So it's still a back-to-back, but there's no travel in advance of the game on Monday because it's literally in the same building that they'll play in. And when Quinn's not always the first guy to kind of pull the plug, but the Hawks did a good job kind of just being mindful of the situation. It's a long trip. You have a shorthanded roster and not pushing guys too hard. So anyway, it was an impressive performance. We'll talk about that even more in a second again, because I think basically everyone played well for Atlanta for the most part. No one really struggled on the Hawks roster, which is always a good sign for a road win. But yeah, that's kind of how it was. The Hawks it was certainly in doubt. The game was not over at halftime, but they, I believe, were up by double digits for the last almost 30 minutes of the game. It was never really in doubt from that point forward. So we'll leave it there for now. All right, we'll touch on the player side in a second, but first, a word from our sponsors on the show. Today's show is brought to you by Stitch Fix. And with Stitch Fix, you get a stylist who understands your style, your size, and your budget constraints, and they do all the shopping for you. That really makes the easiest way to upgrade your wardrobe this season. Stitch Fix also gives you the stylist that you're looking for with your size, style, and budget preferences, and you can order boxes that you want to, how you want to, with no subscription required, and they'll send you 5 just for you pieces, plus recommendations for your outfits, and also pro styling advice. You keep what works and send back the rest. Your stylist also sends the right pieces that you're looking for, that just the right stuff always, and the fit is always on point with Stitch Fix, and they make it also easy for you as well. Personally, I don't like to shop. I don't know about you, I don't love it, and they save that time and the effort for you. Plus, they get the outfits that you're looking for, and they make you look good and feel really good on top of that. If you don't love something as well, just send it back. It's that easy. Shipping, returns, and exchanges are always free, and they give you style, and they make you feel as good as you look, and you can get started right now today at stitchfix.com/lockedon. The place to go is stitchfix.com/lockedon. One more time, stitchfix.com/lockedon. All right, to the player side in this one, and I said it before, but really everyone played pretty well in this one for Atlanta. That's obviously a positive sign, given how short-handed they are. But all 10 guys played 13 minutes or more. Garrison Matthews actually played the least at 13 minutes. He actually was plus 12 in those minutes, had 6 points, had a couple threes, a steal, and a block. Looked pretty good to me. Wes Matthews played 14 minutes, hit both of his threes as well. Everyone shooting the ball well for the Hawks right now, had a steal. I'm not 100% sure he was going to play. He didn't play till the middle of the second quarter, but still, I thought Wes gave him good minutes once again. Trent Forrest, 16 minutes, 2 points, 3 assists, plus 9, ran the offense well. defended well. Trent's always, unsung in some ways. He's not ever going to really score at a high level, but he's doing his job. And I think also played a couple minutes with DeJounte, which was a good kind of wrinkle that they were able to go to. Bruno was Bruno in this one. 6 points, 7 rebounds, had 2 steals, also had 4 turnovers, and was 2-6 on the floor. So Bruno had highs and lows. Couple of, I thought, not great calls against Bruno to sort of defend him a little bit. But it was a bit of a roller coaster for Bruno, but I thought he was fine on the whole in this game. And then DeAndre Hunter, if you missed it, I spent a bunch of time on Friday's podcast talking about just how good Hunter has been, and I called it the best stretch of his career. And I think that's still the case right now. For about the last 6 weeks or so, he has been the best he's ever been, and I've watched every minute of his career so far. That sentiment still applies because he was very good again in this game. 20 points in 24 minutes, 6 of 8 on 2s, 2 of 5 from 3, 2 assists, 2 rebounds, had a block shot as well, 1 turnover, +5. He's actually scored in double figures now in 17 consecutive games, which is the longest streak in the NBA right now, actively for a guy coming off the bench. So consistency, he's shooting the heck out of the ball as he has been this entire time. And he's been playing great. So do whatever you need to do, but Hunter's been really, really good for a while now. That's been huge for the Hawks. To the starters. Vit Krejci, 25 minutes, only had 5 points, 3 assists, 2 rebounds, and had a block shot in this game. Got to the line 3 times, made all 3. I think people have started to notice this. It's actually a good sign. Vit's defense has come a long way. Prior to this year, Vit is an intriguing player. He always has been, but I would describe him as a problem or at least a question mark on defense. And the combination of that and question mark with his shooting made him a kind of tenable player. Like, he's got great size, great feel, 6'8", good passer, good ball handler for his size, all that stuff. But the issue with not being a shooter or a defender kind of limits you in a lot of ways. Right now, though, he's playing good defense. I would hesitate to say, like, for sure that he's like a capital G good defender now, but he A, might be, and B, for sure he's come a long way. Like, he's executing now. He's using his length. Again, shouts to College Park. I don't want to overstate it too much, but they've done a fantastic job with Ryan Schmidt and that crew in College Park. Defensively, Bufkin has gotten a lot better during the course of the season. Even AJ, I thought what I've seen from him at that level has been playing better defense in College Park. And I think Vit now in particular has been playing great defense compared to where he was previously. So Vit's not like a super flashy guy as far as like sex appeal right now, but I think he's playing really quality basketball and just keeping the trains running. I think he's not taking a lot of shots. His usage is very low, but he's moving the ball, making good decisions. He can dribble twice and pass. He can drive, he can kick, all that stuff. And that's been a useful kind of connecting piece for this offense. Clint Capela was really good in this game. 15 points, 13 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, 2 blocks for Clint. A game best +18. He was 7 of 11 from the field. Man, he looks good. I think that obviously I am prone to thinking Clint is better than people think he is. But when he first came back post-injury, he looked awful. And I talked about that. And if I'm talking about it, it is what it is. But since he kind of got his legs under him a little bit, he's been playing well again. Like, he's playing like a starting center again. Like, you can debate the Clint thing. We don't have to do it on every podcast. But he's been back to a starting center level since the first 3 or so games since he was really bad coming off the injury. Tonight, he was probably his best game since then. He played very well in this one. He soundly outplayed Zubac, who's a pretty good player, and that was a huge part of why the Hawks were able to kind of establish themselves early on in this game and then hold on from there because Clint was very effective. Bogey, 11 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists for Bogey. He didn't shoot the ball great, 3 of 11 from 3-point range, and there's a little bit of a mystery. I don't want to overstate it because I'm recording this podcast at 1 a.m. Eastern time going into Monday morning. Bogey left the game in the fourth quarter. The game was already kind of out of reach for the most part, and there wasn't a clear injury mechanism. Like, I watched the play back. I didn't see much, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. It's just the broadcast angle that I have. And also, Bogey went to the locker room, which I saw right away on the broadcast. He was followed by the training staff, and then after the game, Quinn got a kind of general question, I think it was from Tabitha Turner, about Bogey's status. And Quinn said, and I'm quoting here, "They're going to examine him and we'll come back to you with something soon," end quote. What we don't know is literally what the injury might even be. Like, I don't know what part of the body it is. I don't know anything. But he left the game, went to the locker room, and then Quinn acknowledged in his answer that they're examining him. So, TBD, we probably won't know anything until the injury report comes out, which is usually something like early afternoon in a back-to-back on Monday. So this might be irrelevant by the time you listen to this podcast. But keep an eye on that. Hopefully nothing serious for Bogey. But it wasn't like he was like helped off. Like he walked off on his own power. They were up big fourth quarter. It wasn't like terribly concerning, but the fact that Quinn said they're going to examine him, we'll see what that looks like. And then lastly, Jalen and DeJounte. So Jalen I thought was really good in this game as well. 18 points, 12 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks, plus 16. 3 from 3 in this game. Like that's not always something you can bank on, but I thought Jalen, he was the number one driver of the transition advantages the Hawks had in this one. The rebounding is always impressive. The passing was on display. The steals, the blocks, like he was really, really good in this game on the whole. Not a huge surprise. Jalen's getting his legs back under him after the ankle injury, but yeah, really good stuff from him. At one point, he was kind of just taking it to Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. Like, I'm not saying he's better than those guys, but he certainly was better for one part of this game. And yeah, awesome performance from Jalen. And then DeJounte Murray led the Hawks with 21 points, 10 assists, 2 steals. I thought DeJounte was better in this game on the whole as far as impact was concerned than a couple times when he's actually had those huge scoring games. Like he had a couple of 35, 40-point games in the last few weeks. I thought he was actually better tonight than he was in those games. He was under control. He didn't take a lot of shots. Not that he can't take shots, but he was 5-10 from 3, which is also very helpful. But only 4 2-point attempts. Didn't force it. He passed the ball. He moved the ball really well. I think defensively he did a good job, like a better than average job for him in this one on Harden, on Man, even George at times. So I thought DeJounte was really good. He was sort of in control of this game, and plus 10, 21 and 10 is obviously very solid on its own. But look, the Hawks played well. I don't want to say. I know it seems like a very obvious thing to say, but even going on the list here of 10 guys. I don't think I would say that anyone on the Hawks roster that played tonight was below average for their normal baseline. Maybe you could say Bruno had a couple of hiccups along the way. Bogey wasn't fantastic, but everyone was fine or better. And a lot of guys were better than fine. Jalen was really good. Clint was really good. DeJounte was really good. Hunter was really good. Wes Matthews. Yeah, so a team effort across the board. Nice balance from Atlanta and a very impressive win on the road. From here, the Hawks, as I sort of tease out, play again tomorrow. But just as a status update, the Hawks are now up 4.5 games on the Nets with 15 games to play for the Hawks. Now, that is not a season is over commanding lead, but it is a pretty notable lead with that small amount of time to play. Again, Brooklyn has a tiebreaker, so it's essentially 3.5 or 4 games, not 4.5. But Brooklyn's lost 5 of 6. Ever since they beat the Hawks, they've been playing pretty badly. The Hawks are the clear favorites. I did posit, I think last week, that if the Hawks were to go 0-5 on the trip, they might be in some trouble. But now they're 1-2 on the trip. That's not a possible outcome anymore. And being up 4.5 games against a pretty not very good opponent in Brooklyn, the Hawks are, I think, an 80+% favorite to make the playoff. I should say playoffs, the postseason, the play-in at this point. So if you're monitoring that, pros and cons, I got a couple of responses tonight from people that are trying to kind of root for the Hawks to not make the play-in. I'm not telling you what to think on that. That's your choice. But some eye rolling from people that were like, "Oh, good, the Hawks are winning again." I get it, but the Hawks are trying to win. If you watch the way they're handling things, the way they're talking about stuff, their minutes, Quinn and company are trying to win every game. So that's where the Hawks are, and at the moment, they are huge favorites to make the play-in. Keep that in mind. From here, they play the Lakers in the same building on Monday evening. It's actually the latest start time of a game all year for the Hawks, I believe. It's a 10:30 game in LA on a Monday. So that's tough for those of us on the East Coast. In fact, the next 2 games are 10:30 on Monday and then Thursday in Phoenix. Get your naps in if you're possibly able to do that. I'll be trying to do that. I probably won't succeed, but I'll be probably delirious at the end of those games. I'll be recording at 2 something a.m. Tough scene. But anyway, notably there, LA did not play today, so that's an advantage for the Lakers. But we already have the injury report for the Lakers because they did not play today. And LA has lots of injuries. Lots and lots and lots of injuries. So, not that the Hawks don't, of course. But at the moment, they already have 4 guys ruled out with injury. That's Cam Reddish, old friend, Jared Vanderbilt, Gabe Vincent, and Christian Wood are already out. But then, much more importantly than that, AD and LeBron are both questionable. Now, they're often questionable. LeBron is questionable, it feels like, every game. But AD left the game on Saturday against the Warriors in a national TV game and didn't come back. So we'll see if those guys play. If AD and LeBron play, the Hawks will be underdogs in the game. It'll be a back-to-back, I guess, a team that's on full rest on the road. If one of those guys doesn't play, that levels the playing field. If they both don't play, then the Hawks become maybe favorites in the game. So a big swing. another thing we won't know until much closer to the tip off on Monday, but they got one. And honestly, like, it was not a given that the Hawks are going to win a game on this trip after they lost the first two games, because the first two games on the trip were the quote-unquote easy games in Portland and Utah. The last three are harder, but they won tonight, and then we'll see how they play on Monday, and then they play on Thursday against Phoenix. That's going to be a tough game as well, but we'll have time to talk about that later on this week. That's all I have on today's podcast. Please subscribe to the show anywhere you get your podcasts. Please check us out on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Leave ratings, reviews, nice comments, likes on YouTube, all that fun stuff. Please share the show with a friend or two or three in your life. I'd very much appreciate that. Also, if you're an audio-only subscriber on Apple, Spotify, etc., you'll also get some bonus content from the folks at Locked On Sports Atlanta. They have post-cast episodes that go in those audio feeds. They have their own YouTube channel, but they have they sort of share the audio channel with me. So no less from me. I've still been doing my normal workload of like 5-ish shows per week, but just some extra stuff for you there. So please subscribe to the podcast. Follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there as well at BT Rowland. Also write about the Hawks regularly at patreon.com/BT Rowland if you are into that sort of thing. And yeah, thanks for listening. Hopefully you enjoy the start to your week on Monday. And I don't know, in about 26 hours from now, I'll be recording again after Hawks Lakers on Monday. So we'll see you after that game. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.